Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Welcome to Finding Certainty. As I always say, today's our favorite day of the week. At least it's mine. I look forward to Fridays all week long. You know, it's funny as business owners, entrepreneurs, parents, employees, it doesn't matter what we're doing, but, you know, we work hard. We start out on Mondays with an overflowing inbox, emails to catch up on, deadlines to hit, and we just press all week long. I don't know of anybody that is, at least in my circles, that are really not working hard, that they're lazy, they're passive, they're not actively pursuing whatever their objective is, right? They're going after building their business, building their marriage, raising their kids, and it is a lot of work, and it can be exhausting at times. And yet we have these elements in our life that we look forward to, these elements that we're excited about, that we're building for. Maybe it's retirement. Maybe it's getting the kids out of the house, right? Maybe it's seeing that business become what we know it can be. We all have dreams, right? We all have objectives and goals. We all have habits we're trying to create and weaknesses we're trying to overcome. We all want peace of mind and purpose. We want to leave a legacy. We want to look back on our lives and feel like we made a difference. We didn't just make income. We did good. We didn't just do business, as we like to say at Certainty. We all have a brighter future that we're looking forward to. And if we don't, we should change that, right? It could be really discouraging if you don't feel like the future is bright. If you feel like that light in the tunnel, that it's a train, not not the sun. And so as I talk about Fridays being my favorite day of the week, one of the reasons is I look forward to being on this show and either doing my monologue that like I'll be doing today, or speaking with my guests and unpacking how we make that future brighter. How do we create more opportunity, more hope, more peace of mind, more purpose? How do we create more certainty in our lives and in our futures? That's obviously the objective of this show. That's why we decided to call our company Certainty Management. That's why I decided to call this show Finding Certainty. If I have one hesitation, causes me a pause sometimes, is that I think we probably should have called it Creating Certainty or Discovering Certainty. It's a little bit more passive, I think, than Finding Certainty. It sounds like maybe you just stumbled across it, but it did sound better, and it does flow, and I think it is a great reminder, a great, just a symbol, I guess, of what we stand for. So I look forward to this all week because it gives me time throughout the week to think about it, to prepare for it, to plan for it, and really to, on my own behalf, and in those quiet moments as I'm maybe drifting off at night, going to sleep, or going on a walk or a run or swimming laps, I'm thinking about this topic. What is certainty? What does it mean? How do we not just find it in our lives, but how do we build it and cement it in our lives? How do we make it not just an element of our lives, but a theme of our lives, an abiding principle in who we are and what we do? I think it's such an important word because there's a lot of layers to it, right? It's not only what we do and how we think, but it is and can be and should become who we are. We are a person of certainty. Throughout this year, as I've been going through these monologues, I thought maybe I'd share with you the story of how they came about. Again, if you're new to the show or haven't heard, maybe you missed it before, but kind of happened by accident. to be honest. I had a guest scheduled last June 2023, a little bit over, almost a year and a half now. And she was supposed to be on my show that Friday morning. And unfortunately, she had some technical difficulties. So she wasn't able to get through Zoom we were using at the time. I now use a studio called Riverside, which I highly recommend. But she wasn't able to get in. And with no notice, I had no preparation, I had to wing it. And I did a monologue off the cuff with no planning, no preparation, about a minute's notice that I was going to have to do that. Well, just off the cuff, I was able to. I don't think it was too terrible. It probably wasn't perfect. Definitely wasn't the best I've ever done. But I was able to talk about this topic of certainty, and I encourage you to go back and listen to it. I shared 3 elements of certainty, three secrets to finding certainty in your life. Later in the year, I decided to do another monologue in November. I did it on gratitude, of course, right around Thanksgiving weekend. And I really enjoyed it. As much as I enjoy doing interviews, I enjoy meeting interesting people and hearing their stories. I do most of the time as I'm doing interviews, I'm just listening, right? I do the question and answer. I give feedback. I might say things like, "Oh, that's a great comment. I really like that," and I'll share my thoughts. But for the most part, it's about an 80-20 relationship, right? I talk maybe 20% of the time at the most, and they do 80% of the talking. And I find myself a lot of the time wishing I could say more. Right? I have a lot of thoughts. Right? I have a lot of insights that I could share on this topic or this point that this speaker, this guest may be sharing. That's one of the reasons I decided to start these monologues, was so that I could say more, that I could share some of the experience and insights that I have gained over the last, 40 years of a career since I was a young man, and I've been in sales and finance and business now for going on 40 years. That's a long time. Had some amazing mentors and some amazing colleagues and some very instructional experiences. I've also had some very painful experiences, and I think we would all agree we learn as much from the hard times as we do from the good ones. I've been through death, divorce, and bankruptcy. I've been through catastrophic loss. I've been through legal challenges and hurdles we had to get through. We just went through one recently that we had to deal with that unfortunately turned out our way, and we were happy to see it. But, I've been through a lot, and I feel like I have a responsibility to share lessons that I've learned with my listening audience, with you as my listener, that can help you in your own life to overcome, right? To become who you can be, to create more certainty in your own life and prospects. And so that's why I decided to start the monologue. One, I like to talk, and so it gives me a chance to talk a little bit more. But more importantly, and more significantly, I did feel like I had a responsibility, a duty even, to do that. So here we are. As I've been going through this process this year, my monologue journey, as you know, I've been going through the alphabet. And when I talk about certainty becoming not just an element of our life, but actually an abiding theme, a principle, a characteristic even of not just what we do and how we think, but who we are. I think that's a really important reminder. It's a really important insight into the topic of certainty itself. Because the more we become a certain person, a confident, at peace, empathetic, insightful, mature, as the more we become an accountable person, a balanced a disciplined, a composed person. All these principles I've been talking about through these monologues all this year, the more we become that person, guess what? The more certainty abides. The more it becomes and flows through our life and interactions. And it can change not only our lives, but the lives of those around us. So, moving on. That's a long intro. But I've been wanting to share those thoughts because that's why I do this. That's why I'm doing these monologues, to help you experience that more and more in your own lives and experiences. So today, we're going to be discussing one of the most transformative, yet often underappreciated forces in life and business. And that is the topic of kindness. K is for kindness. As we've gone through the alphabet, we've gone from A through J. Last month, we talked about J is for joy. How we have to have a mindset and a viewpoint, a perspective that is established on and imbued with joy. I think it's a really important principle in our search for more certainty in our lives. But as we approach the upcoming presidential election, it's easy to see how kindness, this principle, this next step in our journey, is under attack, right? It's at risk. It's challenging. It's easy to see how we are divided as a nation and how kindness has been forgotten in many respects. People feel so strongly about their stand, their platform, whatever that might be, that we forget about common courtesy, decency, and respect. With just 5 days left until November 5th, many of us are finding it challenging to be kind when conversations turn political. A friend of mine shared an interaction he had just last week. It was with a lady that he met. Well, he was just out walking his dog, I think, or taking a walk, and she saw his Trump shirt. He had a Trump Mania shirt, and they got into it together. She said, "How can you wear that shirt?" And they had words. And he said, if she was a guy, I probably would have punched her in the mouth or punched him in the mouth. And I just thought, wow. I said, how have we slid so low in America that we can't agree to disagree, right? We can't have these crucial conversations, but do so in ways that don't deteriorate in that way. We all feel strongly about what we believe, right? Whom we support, the direction we hope our country takes. But as divided as we may seem, it's so important to remember that we have a lot more in common than we have that's different, right? We all want many of the same things. I say this, I've said this before. My whole show is focused on how together we can accomplish more. Together we can create more certainty in our lives. We do want the same things. We want clean drinking water. We want low inflation. We want safety in our schools, freedom of religion. We even want smooth, pothole-free roads. You've heard me say this before. And I think one of the key reminders, one of the things we all need to remember, not just this week as we're voting for the next U.S. president, but every day, we need to remember that there is so much more than unites us than divides us. This sentiment, this idea that kindness is key, that it's important, that it can bridge our differences, is essential, not just in our communities, but also in our workplaces, our relationships, even our daily interactions. I mean, isn't it funny that oftentimes, in fact, we are often the least kind to the people that we are most close to, namely our friends and family members. I mean, we say things to our kids and our significant other and other family members that we wouldn't imagine saying to a coworker at work. And I don't know if it's because we take them for granted or if it's because we think they'll forgive us because they love us and they're going to stick with it. Well, our divorce rate in America would suggest otherwise. Why is it that we do that? Why is it that we think it's okay to let kindness slip out the window? It's okay if they're a Democrat and I'm a Republican or vice versa, for me to forget about being kind and cordial. Why is it okay with a family member to yell at them and tell them what we think? And we see that with teenagers a lot of the time with their parents, right? Obviously there's some psychological and coming of age issues there as teens are trying to establish their independence. We know all that, but back to this question of kindness. Why is it that we struggle? Why is it that we think it's okay to revert to an immature, disrespectful, uncourteous response or interaction, when we would never do that with somebody that we cared for, respected, and we'd never do that with, a dignitary that we met, a celebrity we were impressed by, a boss maybe, an elder that we really looked up to. I think it's a question of respect as much as anything, right? We don't respect that person's opinion or stance or whatever the case might be. There's a really phenomenal book that I highly recommend you read if you haven't. It's called Bonds That Make Us Free. It was put out by an author and a team. I remember the author's name was Terry Warner, as I recall. But this book, I think, teaches a lesson that can be really integral in this topic. And it's a lesson about us taking responsibility for our own thoughts and actions and even our mistakes, right? I won't go into it here, but I highly recommend you look at Bonds That Make Us Free. Look for Terry Warner. And I may come back to this a little bit later in the show, but today I want to explore kindness not just as a feel-good concept, but as a strategic, practical approach to building trust, loyalty, and ultimately certainty in our lives. Kindness is not a weakness. It's a powerful force that allows us to connect deeply, to foster mutual respect, create environments where not only can we be successful, but where everyone can feel valued, secure, and committed. And isn't that what we want in our country? I mean, isn't that what we want from this presidential campaign? Whoever wins, that we can feel valued by them. We can feel secure in our futures. We can feel that they are committed to us as we are committed to them. I mean, I think as we unpack this topic of kindness today, I think you'll see examples of people and groups and companies that are doing this. I'm going to share a few with you today that are phenomenal examples of this principle. And you see the successes that are happening because of that. So first, let's define kindness. Okay, I believe kindness, a good definition of the topic, is compassion in action. Let me say that again. I believe, and this is just gospel according to Patrick, that a phenomenal principle, a phenomenal definition of kindness is compassion, and not just compassion, but compassion in action. To understand the power of kindness, let's define it clearly. Okay, kindness is a demonstration of care and concern for others, for that other person in that interaction or that relationship, that through our words and actions, both big and small, we show that we respect them. We show that we, at the very least, understand them, even if we don't agree with them. And that we care about the relationship today and tomorrow. Now, I know a lot of people, especially in this political climate, might say, well, I don't care about a relationship with them. They're garbage, right? That's the big thing these days. Somebody said about the Trump supporters, they're garbage. And they say, well, those guys are liberal fanatics. And we're just, you see this mudslinging going back and forth. And I just want to close my eyes and scratch my head and say, where did common decency go? If we, through our compassionate action, compassion in action, if we, through those efforts of respect and courtesy and decency and understanding and agreeing to disagree, but at least understanding the other person's position, if we can focus on that versus how we feel and how we're really passionate about this point, and I think they're wrong, and it's almost like, I was thinking of a metaphor of this. It's like you're hiking up this beautiful trail to this gorgeous vista, right? You're in the Teton Mountains or the Tetons of Wyoming or Banff and Jasper up in Canada, or maybe the Pacific Coast or Alaska. I mean, some of these places that just have extraordinary vistas, right? Beautiful scenery. And yet you're too focused on the mud puddle you had to walk through to get there, or maybe the mud that is on your shoes to enjoy the vista. It's so asinine. I mean, why would we want to focus? Why would anyone want to focus on the mud or the drawback? There's nothing is ever perfect. Doesn't matter. I don't care what it is, a business, a venture, a relationship. I heard once from a favorite author of mine named Ellen Kreidman. She wrote a series called Light His Fire and Light Her Fire. And she said, and I've always remembered this, I try to remember it when my wife and I disagree or I don't like something she's doing. I think she says, it doesn't matter who you're with. You're going to like 10 things about them, and there's going to be 10 things you don't like about them. And if you decide to trade them in for another model, you're going to find somebody that you think is way better for you. You're going to like 10 things about them and 10 things you don't like about them. They might be different, but it's never going to change. So back to my analogy, why would you take this hike, climb this mountain, go through the challenges to get there to this vista? Maybe it's a viewpoint, maybe it's a lake that you're going to be able to camp at and go fishing at. Maybe it's you're climbing a mountain to get to the summit, whatever the objective or the metaphor might be. Why would you waste your time and effort focusing on that mud on your boots, or focusing on that scrape on your knee when you stumbled and banged your knee up or something? Nobody would do that. And yet some people do. They're hyper focused on the negative. Kindness as a principle goes beyond these irritations, these distractions, these shortcomings, right? It goes beyond material generosity. It involves giving freely of our time, our attention, our understanding. It takes the higher road, right? My parents have a sign in their house that I've always appreciated that says, reach up. And it's a great reminder. I've talked about this before. I think I did when I did the monologue on faith. I talked about how there's a fork in the road. Every one of us, every day, multiple times a day, there's a fork in the road where we can choose to go right or go left, or even a better analogy, to go up or go down, to reach up or to sink low. And guess what? When you reach up, when you admit when you're wrong, when you're humble, when you listen, guess what? You feel better. Relationships grow and good things happen. I was talking to my son Evan about this recently. He's 18. He's trying to figure out his head from his butt, and he's trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life, and he's still got some growing up to do. And yet he's 18, so he's an adult, right? Sometimes I need to remind him that, if you're an adult, you need to act like an adult, right? I was telling him about how Everything you do, Evan, you have a choice to make. It's going to build the relationship or hurt it. It's going to build the respect of others or hurt that respect. It's going to help you come out smelling like a rose or like something else, right? Every single choice, every single interaction has a high and a low, a positive and a negative, a win or a loss. You choose to reach up or you choose to sink low. And this most definitely applies in how we respond to each other from the standpoint of kindness. In business, kindness creates certainty by establishing an atmosphere of trust. Now, I can't imagine that if the two parties couldn't work across the aisle with kindness and respect, if that wouldn't establish a greater atmosphere of trust that could turn into something extraordinary, right? It could accomplish so much more. And it's challenging. It's hard. I know it's not easy, but it's so important. When people know they're valued, not just for what they produce, but for who they are, they're much more likely to feel committed, confident, certain in their role, certain in the relationship. They're much more willing to give of themselves and to contribute to the cause, to collaborate, right? I love that word, collaborate. My business partner, Frank Hellring, his favorite word is reciprocity. And again, that's a simple yet powerful principle of collaboration, of mutual compassion, understanding, and effort that goes both ways, right? Kindness, like so many of these principles we've been talking about this year, goes both ways. You show kindness, you're more likely to receive it. You are patient, you receive more patience. You're respectful, you'll receive more respect in return. When you are honest, people are more likely to be honest with you. The list goes on. It creates these ripple effects, as we call them, that can change lives. We're already up against our break, guys. This always goes by so fast. But as soon as I get back, I'm going to share an example of a company that is doing exactly this. They're building certainty through values, one of those being kindness. And they're one of my favorite examples in business of this principle. So don't go away. When you come back, I'm going to actually share several examples of this so important topic of kindness and how we can and should incorporate it into our own lives, our own businesses, our own political conversations, into everything we do. And if we do, we can enjoy greater certainty ourselves, model it for others, and create those ripple effects that can change everything. So don't go away. We'll be back in just a minute.
Follow Voice America at Facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Voice America programs are now available on your favorite connected device, including Amazon, Alexa, and Google Home. Through streams with Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio, listening to your favorite show is as easy as saying the show name followed by the word podcast.
Hey, Alexa, play Finding Your Frequency podcast.
If that doesn't work, try adding on TuneIn or on iHeartRadio or on Apple Podcasts.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, Team, like Mary.com.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
You are listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. Discussing the topic of kindness today. K is for kindness. We've progressed through the alphabet. I thought about talking about kismet, which, as you know, means kind of it goes along with the law of attraction, with karma. That's another K word we could have talked about. I'll put it out there. It comes back to you. But ultimately, I decided kindness was needed, especially this week. One of the most prominent examples of kindness as a business strategy is the company Patagonia. Patagonia's corporate philosophy is based on kindness. It's not just toward the environment, for which they're well known, but also toward their employees, their customers, and communities. They're actually known for their Don't Buy This Jacket campaign, which encouraged people to consider the environmental impact of their purchases. And this wasn't merely a marketing gimmick. It was a genuine call for responsible consumption. What did this kindness achieve? It built deep, abiding trust with their customers. Patagonian customers are raving fans, as they say. Customers saw in Patagonia, they saw a company that stood for something beyond profits, an organization dedicated to doing good in the world. And what's the result of this kindness? They are one of the most loyal customer bases globally. They've had sustained growth, extraordinary profitability. Patagonia's kindness creates certainty, not only in the marketplace, but also in the workplace, inspiring employees who feel a genuine connection to the company's mission. I don't know about you, but as a business owner, as a citizen, if my employees, my team members, we have associates across the country that work with certainty management, sharing our solutions for profitability. But if we could accomplish that, we can inspire them to feel a genuine connection to our mission, I will feel like we succeeded. Imagine if, whether you're Republican or Democrat, independent, if you felt inspired and a genuine connection to the president's mission, even if you didn't vote for him or her. Imagine what we could accomplish as a country. One of the most overlooked but essential traits of effective leadership is kindness. Leaders who act with kindness create certainty within their teams. Think about that. I try to remember that because I tend to be a little bit cranky sometimes and tend to, when I'm feeling stressed or tired, I tend to be short. I'm constantly trying to catch myself and be kind with my wife, Tesha, with my kids, with my team. It's hard sometimes, but it's so important. It creates that certainty within your team. When employees feel valued and respected, they're far more likely to perform at their best. And I think we all know this, right? Certainty in leadership comes from trust, and nothing will build trust faster than kindness and respect. Consider Herb Kelleher. He's the co-founder of Southwest Airlines. Kelleher was known for his genuine care and kindness toward his employees. I've got a brother-in-law who's a pilot for Southwest, and I've heard him talk about the culture that Mr. Kelleher established. Herb understood that if he treated his employees well, they would in turn treat their customers well. Interesting thought, right? And there's ripple effects I'm talking about. This philosophy paid off. Southwest Airlines became known and is still known to this day for its excellent customer service and its high, extremely high employee satisfaction, which of course has translated into financial success. Go figure. Kelleher's kindness from the top trickled down to his entire company. And it wasn't just a moral decision, it was a strategic one. One that built certainty within his company, ensuring its long-term success to this day. I know when my brother-in-law, Luke, he's a pilot, when he got on with Southwest, they were so excited. Because of all the airlines out there, it is one of those that is most desirable. As just from an employee standpoint, that's the one they want to work for. And he has an amazing job now, and they take very good care of him. So how do we develop more certainty through kindness? Well, kindness builds certainty not only in others, but also in ourselves. I was talking about not just being an element, but certainty not just being an element, but a theme in our life, a characteristic. Well, the same thing happens with kindness. When we align our actions with kindness, we gain confidence and clarity, knowing we are living out our values, contributing positively to the world around us. It just feels good, right? But then the ripple effects happen. This internal certainty radiates outward, creates stronger relationships, loyal customers, and trusted partnerships. Tony Hsieh, who's the former CEO of Zappos, is another great example of this principle. His focus on kindness and happiness within the workplace transformed Zappos into one of the most beloved brands in the world. Zappos is renowned for its exceptional customer service, with employees that are encouraged to go above and beyond, sometimes sending handwritten notes or surprise gifts to customers. I mean, again, it started at the top, it's trickled down to the workforce, and those ripple effects reach to their customers, the communities in which they live, and the world as a whole. This approach to kindness built a certainty in Zappos's brand that continues to this day, resulting in loyalty that far outlasts its competitors. Well, isn't that an objective all of us would like? Kindness often invites moments of kismet, right? As I was saying before, these unexpected, serendipitous opportunities that align with our values, open doors, and make a difference in ways we may have not anticipated. This is why leading with kindness is so powerful. When we prioritize kindness, we create a foundation of goodwill and trust, and we become magnets for opportunities, especially those that align with our goals and our values. Ben & Jerry's is another prime example. Their commitment to kindness and social justice has led to partnerships and initiatives that reinforce their brand and resonate deeply with customers. By prioritizing kindness, Ben & Jerry's created a foundation where kismet could do its work. Karma takes place, right? Ripple effects happen, allowing the company to achieve goals that might have been impossible otherwise. So let's look at history for a moment. One of the, I think, most powerful examples from history was the Marshall Plan. And it's obvious. There's lots of examples, but kindness as a strategy, as I called it, it's not just a moral principle, but it is a strategy. There's benefits. There's not, I say ripple effects, but there is not just a karmic effect, but there is a return on investment when you are kind and you show kindness. I wish more of our politicians understood this. I think if there was a politician, and I don't think they exist today, I think I'm a little bit optimistic about well, I won't say who, but I am optimistic about one specific senator that I think could accomplish this in the future. But if they could truly work across the aisle and create this collaboration with both parties, we could retire our national debt. We could bless so many people. But I digress. So kindness as a strategy, it isn't limited to individuals or companies. History does offer multiple examples of entire nations adopting kindness as a tool for peace and progress. As I said, the Marshall Plan after World War II was put into place because Europe lay devastated. Right? Instead of letting European nations recover alone, the United States implemented the Marshall Plan to provide billions in aid to help rebuild their economies, including those of former enemies. You know that they didn't just build France and England, they built Germany. This act of kindness helps forge long-lasting alliances that continue to this day, stability across Europe, demonstrating that compassion and collaboration can build a more secure and prosperous world. I talked at the beginning of this show about that light at the end of the tunnel. Is it a train or is it a bright future? Well, it can be a bright future, and kindness is one of those principles that can most assuredly help it come to pass. So let's talk about it. I'd like to share an example from my own life as well. My grandfather, Bill Laing, is my dad's dad. He was a humble man who was never what many would consider successful in life, as far as wealthy or famous or anything like that. Right? He was a just a humble servant leader. He was a bishop for many, many years in his church. And he served widows, he served members of the church, he served members of the community for many, many years. Never asking for recognition, never asking for a spotlight or a limelight. He was a man who lived a life of kindness. And I will always admire him for that. As I was saying before, sometimes it's easy to be kind or respectful or mature in our interactions with those we look up to, right? Someone like our boss, maybe, or a dignitary, a celebrity, or something like that. We're on our best behavior, right? But in our own homes, and behind closed doors, maybe in our businesses with partners, not with our customers, we'd never do that, but with our partners, we can forget to put kindness, respect, and courtesy first. Because we take them for granted, maybe. Maybe we think they'll understand, they know us well enough, they're committed to us, so they're not going to bail on us. I mean, I think about that with my wife. If I get cranky or hangry, as she says sometimes, or I'm hungry and angry, it becomes, I become irritable. It does happen. And I think, why do I do that? Is it because I know she's committed to me come hell or high water, right? To death do us part, for better or worse, on happy days and cranky days? I don't know why we do that. But it does happen. My grandmother, Grace Laing, Bill's wife, my dad's mom, was very challenging in many ways. I loved her. She was a wonderful woman. She cared for her family. She was an example of faith, an example of frugality, an example of consistency. She had 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl. My grandfather used to say he had 1.5 dozen kids. My dad's the oldest. But my grandmother also had several challenges. She dealt with seizures for much of her life. She had blackouts just out of the blue. She'd black out in the middle of the aisle at church or just out of the blue. And for her entire life, they were never able to identify the cause of these blackouts. Well, because of, I think, largely her health issues, there was also some mental health challenges. She could be very, very difficult. In fact, she was very possessive of her boys. I hope this isn't too personal, but when my dad proposed to my mom, Grandma did not approve. From different sides of the track, different backgrounds, she thought my mother was a socialite, and for whatever reason, I think it was mostly just because he was the oldest and he was her confidant. He was her baby, mama's boy in many respects. I think it was hard for her to let go, but she was not nice to my mother. She even threatened to throw herself off Squaw Peak, which is a big cliff, a big lookout overlooking Orem, Utah. and to be honest, she was difficult with several of the son's fiancés' eventual wives, to the point that more than one never truly were able to reconcile and forgive and have a relationship with her. They held that resentment, that grudge for many, many years. Well, my mom was a great example to me of someone who was able to look past hurts, unintended or otherwise, offense, and even downright cruelty, and love and serve my grandmother all her life. And in the end, they became very close. My grandfather took the brunt of a lot of her challenges, and yet he never gave up on her. He loved and served and cared for her, even though it was hard. He built trust. He showed kindness. And it changed our entire family. It impacted me deeply, both his example, my mother's example. And there's so many more, right? But it's a very personal example, but it had a deep impact on me and those who saw it. My grandfather's example. And I don't think I've ever mentioned this to my mom, but her example to me of kindness, even when it wasn't always easy. It's not easy to be kind. It's not easy to be respectful at times. It's not easy to take the high road. But I think of my friend down in Florida who ran into this lady. Imagine if rather than having words and disagreeing, she didn't like his Trump mania shirt and he didn't like her attitude and he told her so. Imagine if he had just said, I respect your opinion. I don't agree with it, but that's okay. We're neighbors. Let's agree to disagree. It's what I was telling my son, when someone accuses him of something, or he feels defensive, or, and maybe he wants to bend the truth a little bit and say, I didn't do that. I said, you know how fast you diffuse a situation if you say, you're right, I messed up. I said, if you always go worse than the other person, they can't do anything. They say, you're stupid. You say, yep, I'm a bonehead sometimes. They say, you really messed up. And you're like, yeah, it was a doozy. I mean, I can't believe I did that. Where do they go? They can't go any further because you took it to a lower level. You agreed with them and even added on some gravy on top. That's a form of kindness in these crucial conversations. So you don't have to agree with everybody. But if you show kindness and respect and defer to their opinion, respect their opinion, at least understand it, if not agree with it, amazing things will happen. As we wrap up, let's return to where we began. In just 5 days, we'll face a significant moment for our nation as we choose our leaders. With so many opinions, beliefs, and backgrounds, we will inevitably disagree on the details. But that's okay, right? If we could all agree to disagree, that's one of the great things about our country, the ability to vote, this democratic process where we get to voice our opinion, and whoever gets the most votes wins. But I grew up being taught that whoever wins, we respect the office, even if we don't like the person. I mean, I may not be a huge fan of one or the other candidate, but I can respect their office, especially once they win. We have to, right? If we don't, then well, what's the point? What's the point of a democratic process if we don't support the winner of that process, the victor, right? Nothing will happen. It's kind of what happened the last 4 years. It's kind of what happened. It's what's happening in many respects. We don't respect you. We don't agree with you, so we're not going to support you, and then nothing gets done. And that is so asinine. We can all agree on this. We want our nation to be safe, prosperous, and unified. We want schools where our children can thrive, streets we can walk safely on. We want a society where we're free to hold our beliefs. We don't have to cram them down someone else's throat for them to be true and real and important. In fact, if we don't cram them down that other person's throat, they're much more likely to listen, to want to work together. One of my favorite movies is a movie called Best of Frenemies, and it's about this Ku Klux Klan leader and a black matriarch in the Deep South who are forced to work together on some sort of committee. I think it was because the court ordered it. I can't remember the whole story, but in the process of working together, one, because they had to, and two, because eventually they came to know each other and understand each other, they became friends. And amazing things happened in their lives and in their communities. If we choose to lead our lives with kindness, we create a foundation for collaboration. We don't need to agree on everything to work together. When we agree to disagree and we treat each other with respect, we find that we have far more in common than we might think. If we can collaborate kindly, quote unquote, great things are possible for our communities, our businesses, our families, and our nation. Kindness builds certainty, and certainty, surprise, surprise, builds unity. And as we go forward, hope we all remember that kindness isn't just a nice gesture. It's a transformative, strategic, so important act that can create a foundation of certainty strong enough to withstand any differences and any challenges. Thank you for joining me on Finding Certainty today. And remember, the choice to lead with kindness isn't just a personal one. It's one that impacts everyone around us. As we approach the coming days and beyond, what do you say we commit to collaborating with kindness? To have compassion in action might be the very thing that leads us to the certainty we all seek, and the nation, the country that we all desire to have, to build, and to watch become. We know what it can be. I believe this is one of the keys to helping it get there. Thanks for listening. As I always say, certainty is out there. You can find it. We can help. If you'd like to learn more, visit us at certaintyteam.com. You can listen to past episodes at certaintylive.com. Whatever you do, have a great weekend. Get out there and vote. Your vote does matter. And this election, I believe, it's not just a pundit. I believe it is one of the most important elections in our history. I wish the very best. However you vote, I'll support you. Even if we agree to disagree, I will be your friend. I'll collaborate with you and hope more of us will. If we do that, we can enjoy greater certainty in our future and also in our present. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Finding Certainty. We hope you've gained some more insight into how to create more certainty in your own business or nonprofit. Join us next week for another taste of the Certainty Experience. Until then, we wish you greater certainty in all that you do.